It's the 24th of August, and welcome to DaviePHD's Mythbusters episode 5. Lots of things are said about Scotland, our relationship with the UK, the EU, money, economics, etc. In these videos, I bust the myths that many people believe stand in the way of Scottish independence. In this week's episode, I bust the myth that the decline in oil prices means that Scotland can't afford to be independent. Now, whichever side of this debate we're on, we all want an environmentally sustainable, profitable energy sector with the associated prosperity and security of energy supply. Whilst there's no doubt that Scotland has benefited greatly from the presence of the North Sea oil industry, we haven't actually received any more money for the oil itself than the rest of the UK has. Any additional prosperity seen in Scotland is almost entirely due to the need to base all the support services for offshore extraction here in Scotland. Oil revenues, which are basically a flat per barrel sales tax, have always been attributed to the UK Treasury and never attributed directly to Scotland, even after devolution. In the 1970s, the presence of oil in Scottish waters saved the UK from going bankrupt. The UK government has never known how to manage such a game-changing resource. To fully understand this, it's necessary to understand how the UK makes money from the sale of oil. The UK sector of the North Sea was divided up into blocks, all the same size. The government then sold survey licences, allowing companies, mostly foreign, to conduct surveys for subsea reserves. Following the survey, the mostly foreign oil companies would then bid for an exploration licence, which would allow them exploratory drilling. If oil was found, then again the mostly foreign oil companies would buy access to the seabed from Crown Estates, and then the company would have to pay duty or oil revenues on each barrel of oil extracted. Now, I'm going to play a short 1-minute clip demonstrating the difference between how we collect money and how Norway does it. Now folks, pick your chins up off the floor. I can hear all the cogs going round. How did Norway, selling similar amounts of the same product for the same price, manage to do so exponentially better than the UK? Well, counterintuitively, they did it by being less capitalist. The Norwegian sector of the North Sea was, just like ours, divided up into small blocks all the same size. Their government established a state-owned company, Statoil, who didn't have to pay their government to conduct surveys for subsea reserves. Following the surveys, Statoil would then get a free exploration licence, which would then allow for exploratory drilling. If oil was found, Statoil were granted free access to the seabed from their government. The company, being state-owned, they had no oil revenues to pay. The state-owned company kept ownership of the whole supply chain too. From the seabed to the petrol tank, every krona of profit went to the state. Initially, Norway didn't allow foreign companies access to their waters. They were later allowed in, but only after Statoil had conducted the survey work themselves and their government charged revenues on a sliding scale based on the surveyed reserves. This led to foreign companies offering larger shares of revenue and competing for the best fields. This led to the nation, which wasn't poor in the first place, becoming one of the wealthiest nations in the world per capita. Inward investment in infrastructure, roads, schools, The establishment of a very generous welfare system led their people to becoming some of the happiest too. By the 1990s, the country had no debt, great infrastructure, a well looked after happy population, and the money just kept rolling in. Knowing that oil is a finite resource, any extra funds not needed for running the state were diverted into the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, where the money was invested and banked for any future needs of the country and our citizens. This more prudent approach allowed Norway to build up a massive positive bank balance, compared to the UK's £2 trillion in national debt. Now, if anybody doubts this approach would fly in the UK, we actually have living, breathing proof in Scotland. The Orkney and Shetland Isles. Both sets of islands were ideally placed to offer port services and real estate to the North Sea oil industry, and their canny local councillors knew this. Before shovels even broke ground, lucrative deals were struck, and smaller, localised versions of the Norwegian Oil Fund were established by their councils. Now, I've worked extensively in Shetland in the past, and well, it just doesn't feel like the Scotland I live and work in. The roads are amazing, parks and public buildings and spaces are immaculately kept. Almost every village with more than 200 people has a leisure centre or a swimming pool. In fact, apart from their puzzling fondness for the Liberal Democrats, it feels more like, well, Norway. The Orkney and Shetland Island councils are two of the wealthiest local authorities per capita in the whole of the UK, and they blazed a trail that the UK government should and could have, but they didn't. As our oil revenues flowed into the UK Treasury, massive infrastructure projects, largely benefiting the southeast of England, were built on the backs of oil workers toiling and risking their lives in Scottish waters. The Channel Tunnel, the M25, Crossrail 1, London Underground upgrades, all funded with Scottish oil. Meanwhile, in Scotland, our infrastructure crumbled. Heavy industry here and in the north of England was left to wither on the vine and die before being outsourced abroad. Compared to prudent Norwegian or even Orcadian and Shetland management of this precious asset, successive UK governments look like they've been asleep at the wheel. But all is not lost for Scotland. Even if we only got additional revenues of $1 per barrel for our oil, it would be $1 more per barrel than we've ever had in the past. If these revenues ever do make it into a ScotGov account, it'll be the first time ever. And all the support industries and jobs will still have to be located here. There are also massive untapped developments on the west coast of Scotland, where we could adopt the Statoil model and enrich our country going forwards. Ultimately, we will need to transfer our renewables, but we already lead this in many areas, and a lot of the oil and gas skills are directly transferable. We could even invest our oil fund in these green projects for a sustainable future. The UK has been on a long and ideologically driven journey of deindustrialisation, despite the possibility of massive, sustainable, and profitable heavy industry supporting long-forgotten communities and sectors of the population. Continuing with the UK will just lead to continued mismanagement of our precious resources. When we start exploring the West Coast, the UK's apparent inability to learn lessons will doom us to repeat the same mistakes of the 1970s, meaning little or no money for Scotland, despite the potential bonanza. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund has a rumoured £175,000 in the bank for every man, woman and child in the country. The UK is currently £33,832 overdrawn for each citizen. Which bank balance would you rather have? If you want to squander the few natural gifts Scotland has left, all the while continuing to develop and enrich our larger neighbour, then stay with the UK. They'll run down Scotland until there's nothing left of value, like they have with all their former colonies. The Norwegian experience debunks the myth that foreign companies won't invest in high-taxing economies. If there's a profit to make, even if it's less of a profit, they will come. But there is the possibility of a better future, greener, more prosperous and fairer, One where new oil development on our western shores are balanced against a new and exciting renewables industry. A future where we charge a proper rate for our oil. Finally, following the fine examples of Norway, Orkney and Shetland, and put the money into Scotland's bank account. A future where energy generated in Scotland could be sold to the rest of the UK and others, instead of just being handed over for free. But we have to be brave enough to take the chance. Vote SNP. And when you get a chance again, vote yes. Folks, thanks for watching. Comment on the Facebook page. Please keep it civil. Unionists are welcome here. I welcome dissenting opinions and debate, but keep it impersonal and not insulting. DaviePHD.